secular manner, a secular way. And this is what O'Brien did. And we have a lovely story of country folk and people and watercourses and farming and cedar trees, an incredibly detailed account on 13 different tablets. Well, one was a cylinder, others were single tablets. And this is all available to look at. It'll be on my website soon. And Lawrence Gardner has done a marvelous work on putting all the bits and pieces together. He found for me the original George Barton publication published in 1914 and demonstrates how much of those texts were translated by Christian O'Brien. And we're only looking at the last 20, 30 years actually to be able to translate this incredible story, incredible record. And O'Brien was able, as one of the world's leading exploration geologists, to find the site and a whole number of other clues from the books of Enoch and from the geology and from the descriptions of the ground and the land. He was able to identify this site close to Mount Hermon, 8 miles north of Mount Hermon and 25 miles west of Damascus. And so we have the site. You can look at it on my website. You can see the Google images of the great watercourse.
Yes.
And to sum it up very briefly, so I don't run on too much, the story really is from Genesis. And the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden. Now, this was east of where these people came from, in my mind, much earlier. And there he put the man whom he had formed. And out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant of sight and good for food. And a river, should read great watercourse or watercourse, went out of Eden to water the garden. And from whence it was parted, now the translation there clearly, you don't part rivers with anything much other than sluices, and became into 4 heads. Well, rivers don't go into 4 rivers, they go into 4 heads or 4 irrigation channels.
Yes.
And you have the names. And then, of course, there's a reference here to goeth towards the east of Assyria. Well, Assyria was founded round about sort of 1,700 BC, about 8,000 years after the event. And you can see these images on the website. And I hope that somebody out there will be listening and get in a car or get a driver and drive down to Karsag and talk to the farmers and walk along the watercourse, and maybe you'll be the first person to have a lovely photograph of the sluices and to show us all very clearly that what is on the ground, it can be seen very clearly from the air, is in fact the Garden of Eden site.
That's really, really interesting. I know that David Flynn, for one, also has done some really interesting work when it comes to Mount Hermon and the potential, as the potential place, I should say, of the Watchers, you know, and so much in the same way we have this kind of mythological image, at least, of someone coming from the mountain areas, from the mountainous areas and down, you know, after some kind of catastrophe or something that has happened there. So there's more reference to this particular people around, and what you're saying here is that they basically built the Garden of Eden to maintain themselves and to for survival purpose, obviously, you know, to begin to plant seeds and to begin to do I guess also as well then genetic engineering and start to develop or what do you call it, bring forward plants or food that would be appropriate for the people in that region. Isn't that right?
That's right, and what they picked was what would have been wonderfully fertile land, volcanic land, just off on the edge of the Bekaa Valley, with all the water they needed for summer irrigation, which was crucial for this farming operation, for continuity. We've been to the site, we've taken photographs of the site, and you can see what a perfect site it is. It's the only place in the whole area where one even could have considered irrigation on a large scale. And then we hear about the cedar trees, the cedar forest, the enclosure, the keeper at the gate, all sorts of wonderful stories, how Gilgamesh and Enkidu went to the great cedar forest and slayed the giant and spoke to the keeper at the gate, and all these stories all dovetail in and fit in. And the more I spend on this subject and the more I read what other people are saying and doing, then I think that within quite a short period of time, we'll have a strong body of opinion that supports the basic O'Brien thesis. Now, the one of the keys here is this question of finding that there are 10 probable centers of origin. And sorry, that's my computer going bang, because I've put up the image here by Ron Pinhazi, Joachim Fort, Albert J. Ammerman, tracing the origin and spread of agriculture in Europe. Mm-hmm. And they've looked at 735 archaeological sites used in their analysis. And they've picked out what they regard as 10 probable centers of origin. And the actual sites they've got here is Sulakambus in Cyprus, Catalhoyuk, Kayanu, Abu Huraira, which isn't far from Göbekli Tepe, and I'll talk about that later, Quermes Dir, Ali Kosh, Aswad, which is very close to Damascus, Jericho, which is immensely important, and Abu Mahdi, which is way down on the Red Sea. And you've only got to take an average of those 10 probable centers of origin, and you end up round about this site of Damascus, or the Great Rift Valley that runs literally from Turkey right down into Africa. But that fertile soil and the Rift Valley down to Jericho is immensely important, because at the time, 9,500 BC, that would have been a very warm, well-watered place for people to do experiments with farming. And of course, the Karsag site itself couldn't have been designed better for what was required at that time. And then we look at the domestication of a chickpea. The chickpea is a summer crop. It would dry out if it doesn't have water, therefore it has to be irrigated. We find the domestication of the fig, totally different from the wild fig, 9,300 at Gilgal 2, which is very close to Jericho. So we can follow the trail now of all our original founder crops, and realize, too, that there was an enormous difference between the wild, unpalatable seeds and these incredible crops that were produced, which are still as good today as they were then in terms of nutrition, etc.
Yeah.
And the specialists will tell you that could only have been done by extraordinary genetic modification skills, and that it was a one-stage operation. This idea that people propagated crops over 300 years thinking they might turn into something useful is absolute nonsense. And Lloyd Pye, on his own website, covers these points in great detail, in the same for domesticated animals. They're quite different from the wild animals. And in terms of nearly all the crops, it's now realized that it was a one-stage process. The genes were taken out of the wild and altered, maybe externally altered, to switch on what was required and switch off what wasn't required. And this required maybe thousands of years of sophisticated knowledge prior to that time.
I do want to spend some time here talking about the upcoming Stars and Stones Forum before we round up for our first hour here, Edmund. But just briefly before that, what if you'd have free hands and let's say even unlimited funds, as it were, to go down to Karsag and do some kind of excavation there, or do geological mapping with radars to scan what's beneath the surface? What would you like to do, and what would you hope to find if you had those that available to you?
Well, we've done our preliminary survey of the site. We would have to get permission from the Druze people who live in that area, marvelous people. Their own traditions go back way beyond most other peoples in the area. We had a Druze guide with us, and I believe that we would, without too much difficulty, get local support. I've always wanted the Lebanese authorities to play a major role here, but they haven't even had the courtesy to reply to emails and requests, etc. All they want to do is ask me which institution I belong to, and I have to tell them that I've been trying to keep out of institutions all my life. And so the establishment, of course, has to write all its history books. The church and religions have to rewrite all their material. So when somebody comes along like me and says, look, you don't really know what's going on. I'm incredibly unpopular. Somebody once said that if you tell a lie, you're unpopular, but if you tell the truth, then you really are pushing your luck.
That's a good. Oh, it's such a shame, but hopefully you can just tell them that you're from the Golden Age Project Institute.
That's right.
But
I tell you what I have done. I have spoken to Edinburgh University and Professor Underhill, and I think that they now they can fly a helicopter over the site with a pod underneath, which will do X-ray and geomagnetic surveys. They've done a marvelous job discovering an ancient island off Greece. There's 4 islands there now. There were originally 5 before a big landslide. And so the technology is very straightforward. I just need somebody listening to this program to say, wow, let's put a little team together. We'll fly a helicopter over the site and do all the geophysical work, which can be done in a matter of days or weeks. And then we can start looking at where to put our cores, drill our cores. And I think we'll find a completely preserved segment of soil, which has survived because when this site was destroyed by what they called a 1,000-year storm, around about 6,400 BC, it would have preserved everything in a core, which can be looked at with the pollen seeds dated and to very fine levels, and we can build a whole profile of what was happening, get a very clear idea of where the cedar forests were and went, and we can probably do a lot of bioarchaeology, which within a very short space of time would either say, yes, this was the Garden of Eden site, or no, it wasn't. So it needs to be done, and the sooner it can be done, the better. But we're stretching everybody's limits by making this kind of claim, and it's up for everybody, I believe, who's interested to look at the facts, look at the information, go and visit the site if you want to, and let's all work together to get the truth about our past, so that we can do what was originally intended, and that was to have people working together in harmony. And I believe that these people produced a wonderful system of city-states without politicians, without priests, and community action par excellence, and where everybody was able to have free will, which is the crucial thing, to bring the best out of each other and produce the over 200 trades and craft guilds, for example, in Mari and the upper Euphrates at 2,500 BC. And we actually have a wonderful track record and a wonderful history, and we don't need the conspiracy theorists and journalists to pick up fag ends and then try and produce sensational books about human sacrifice, etc.
Yeah, so that's a call to everyone who has the means and interest to look closer at CARSAG. Just contact Edmund through the website goldenageproject.org.uk, and hopefully something will come out of that. I certainly hope so. It's a very interesting area, and my eyes just got opened to that area since we had you on the program first time in November, Edmund. So hopefully things will be. Something will happen, as it were, and work can be done on that particular site. But let's spend a little bit of time now, Edmund, just talking about the Stars and Stones Forum. We have about 15 or so minutes left here in the first segment, and maybe you can tell us briefly a bit about the forum or the conference, the event, what date and time it is, of course, and also about some of the speakers there.
Well, this is the fourth one which I've organized with John Agnew, who is our host at near Bury St Edmunds in Suffolk. And we do a whole day of dowsing, and we have on that day of dowsing Stefan Cardinaux, who is a Swiss scientist and leading geobiologist, geomancer. We also have Konstantin Korakov of St. Petersburg State Technical University, and he's doing and dealing with this introduction to bioelectrography, vital unseen energies around us. And this is all sharp-end material about understanding dowsing and earth energies, etc., trying to sort out fact from fiction and using new technology to open up the doors. I think this is very, very important. There's a whole day of that and 2 lectures, one by Stefan